All right, today we're talking about the principles of winning. I'm speaking with a 12-year NFL veteran who played at the highest level, including the Super Bowl. His name is Desmond Clark. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and you know if you've listened before that every week we have fascinating guests. We have smart CEOs, we have founders, we have entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, lots of great episodes for you to check out. And before we get into this episode is brought to you by our company, Rise 25, and our platform Podcast Copilot. At Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. And we even invented what some are calling the Wix or Squarespace of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So if you go to our website, you can learn all about it. Go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And before I get into this guest, I want to thank my business partner, Dr. Jeremy Weiss, who is friends with Desmond and has hung out many times in person and raves about him. And so I'm really excited. I know it took a while for us to get this scheduled, but I'm excited to talk to him today. So Desmond Clark, he's the founder and president of Bear Down Logistics. He had a successful 12-year NFL playing career, playing tight end for a number of teams, including the Denver Broncos, Miami Dolphins, and Chicago Bears. During his time with the Bears, he helped lead the team to the 2006 NFC Championship and Super Bowl 41. Is a two-time second-team All-ACC selection and became the first Bears tight end since Mike Ditka to have three consecutive 40 reception seasons. And then after football, he has transitioned into entrepreneurship and has been a speaker at a number of different levels as well. So Desmond, so excited to have you here today and to have this conversation. And I always like to know what my guests were like as a kid, because I think that informs so much of who we become as an adult. And you said when you were growing up in Florida, you were mowing lawns in the neighborhood, and at even before you turned 15, you're filling out applications to get a job at a young age, and you end up working in a restaurant. So tell me a little bit about young Desmond and what that was like.
Yeah, young Desmond was someone who wanted to have and be better than kind of the surroundings, like, and that came from, having living with a single mom who did everything possible that she can do to make sure that we had everything that we need. But then my father being drug addicted, that kind of sent our family into the hole. And then once they were divorced, having a life where there wasn't a whole lot. So at the time when I got to an age where I can kind of control my own destiny, that's kind of what I wanted to do. If it was, hey man, we got a lawnmower, let's go push this lawnmower around the neighborhood, and let's see if we can cut a couple yards and make, 20, 30, $40. Or like you mentioned, when I was 14, I got on my bike and I was all over town filling out applications, a week or two before my 15th birthday. So on my 15th birthday, I had a job offer, and it was interesting. My first job was at Hunan Restaurant, a Chinese restaurant on South Florida Avenue in Lakeland, Florida. And that was quite the experience. The thing that I love most about that experience is I was a dishwasher. So I was back in the kitchen. The cooks would cook food that they wouldn't serve to everybody else. It'd be their own stuff. And man, those are some of the best meals I ever had. So I used to look forward to those meals.
When I was in college, I worked in a dining hall, and that was the best perk, is that
Yeah.
you could eat a meal every shift, and I had a lot of meals during that time. But I think, working in food service, working in a restaurant, I feel everyone should do it. I did that. I did everything from delivery to cashier to eventually waiting on tables. And you learn a ton about customer service through that type of experience, serving
Wait,
people in a restaurant.
waiting on tables is one of the best jobs ever, especially if you can. I never worked at a high-end restaurant, but just knowing what I knew from working in college, I used to work at a couple state restaurants in college, and knowing what I know from then, a high-end steak restaurant in a nice city, man, you can make a really decent living.
You
The
can.
thing that I loved about waiting tables is I had cash in my pocket every day,
Yep.
especially in college, man. You can't beat that. I think at the time, $2.13 was the wage
Wow.
because it's lower than minimum wage because you're getting cash.
Mm.
But I didn't worry about the $2.13. It was all about the tips.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, how did you manage working in college? In college, you're competing at this high level. Like, I mean, my best friend from high school ended up playing football at UCLA, so I was friends with him and his friends at
hmm
UCLA, and I just saw like it was all consuming. How did you manage to do both of those things?
So this was really summertime. So definitely not during the football season
Okay.
at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I may have, after spring football, that's when, I would go out and work or, over the holidays when we are all for the winter for that month or whatever it was. But yeah, it was definitely in the summertime. There's
Yeah.
no way you can manage the course load being a full-time student and playing football, which is it was 20 hours a week back then, but then you had stuff that was
Outside of
not
that.
man, it was voluntary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you know what that means, is your butt better be there.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
voluntary.
Voluntary. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was during my off times. It definitely wasn't during when we had football practice or anything like
You
that.
mentioned you grew up with a single mom, drug addicted dad. Um, did you have this vision of going and playing professionally? I'd love to know, like, how did you make that seem achievable? You know, when you're a young kid and you're struggling, you're fighting to get playing time or whatever. You know, the idea like being in the NFL sometimes can seem so far off,
hmm
and yet in your mind you got to kind of set your mind towards it. So talk a little bit about your mindset as you're in high school and college towards being the best that you can be.
Yeah. So at the age of 14, that's when I determined that I was going to be successful. And I said it just like that to my mom. Not that I wanted to be successful. It was I am going to be successful after seeing everything that I had seen in my life. Um, I made that determination. And then at that point, I didn't look too far down the road. So when I was 14, success to me was graduate high school, go to college, get a good job. But the first obstacle was, okay, damn, how am I going to go to college?
Yeah,
Who's going to pay for that?
yeah,
So one of my older brothers went to college for a year. He didn't get the scholarship. He went as a Prop 48, and then he was supposed to get a scholarship. He didn't get the scholarship, but I knew there was that opportunity to get a scholarship for playing sports. So that became my focus. Okay, if I'm going to go to college, I need to get a scholarship.
mm,
So that's what made me competitive, right? That's what made me get out there on the field and do the work that a lot of people were not willing to do.
mm,
And so I got that scholarship. And then but well before I got the scholarship, I also had to get the grades. And so my senior year, I think I might have made all of two or three B's my entire senior year because I had to get my grade point average up. So that drove me to
mm,
to get to college. And once I got to college, I wasn't really thinking about pro football until after my junior year, which I had led the ACC in catches that year. And I petitioned the NFL to say if I was to leave early, which I was not thinking about, would I get drafted? And they came back and said, "Hey, you'll probably get drafted in the fifth round at the highest to being a free agent, rookie free agent." It was at that point when I started to put my focus on the NFL. In college, just like it was in high school, it was all about how good can I be this year, right now. And I think that was the recipe for success for me, is that I didn't look too far down the road. Is I was focused on right now.
hmm
And okay, where am I at on the depth chart right now? Where am I at as far as my speed, my agility, looking at, comparing myself to the tops in whatever league or whatever position that I was in. I believe that's what every year I continued to climb that ladder until the NFL came calling.
yeah. What was the adjustment like going from college to the NFL? You know, they say, high school to college is just magnitude better. And, I talk to my son, I have two sons who are crazy about sports, talk about this all the time
Mhm.
about, they want to go play professionally. And I say, like, it's just magnitudes better. You just have to be all obsessed with it. So what was it like? What was the adjustment like for you going to the pros?
It was so it was totally different. It was more than what I really expected. The speed of the game. When you go from high school to college, some of your guys are good in high school, right? Then you go to college, yeah, you got all the good guys from high school. And then once you go to the pros, you got all the good guys, all the best of the best
Hmm.
that's competing. So everybody's big, strong, fast. Everybody is the best uh person at their position. And so now you got to compete against all of that. And so it was night and day. Going from high school to college is one thing, but college to pro is a entire different level.
So you end up in the pros, and you start with the Broncos. And I was reading about your background. You were playing behind Shannon Sharpe. I was just watching Shannon Sharpe, Sterling Sharpe were just involved in the Hall of Fame
Yeah.
ceremony. They were getting emotional. He's one of the greats ever. What was it like playing with someone of that caliber?
Yeah. So for people who know who Shannon Sharpe is and just what he looks like as a human being, coming into a building and saying, okay, I have to compete with that, like
Yeah.
a human chiseled specimen. Um, yeah, that was my first like, okay, welcome to the NFL moment.
Yeah.
But great guy. He taught me a lot in that one year that I played with him. He was a smaller tight end. I was a smaller tight end. And there's a lot of techniques and just a lot of mindset stuff that he was able to say, all right, this is how you go about getting the job done in certain situations. And then he was a receiver in college. I was a receiver in college. So we had some things in common that I could relate to. And then watching him, how he worked, decent blocker, he never really got credit for his blocking ability, but the way he blocked, the way he had to do because he was smaller, those are some of the things that I took with me throughout my 12-year career. And it helped me to go 12 years as a smaller tight end.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about some of the coaching and the leadership that you experienced. I played football in high school and experienced a range of different coaches. You always do when you play sports. What sticks out for you? Like any particular coaches that had leadership qualities that you think about to this day?
Yeah, I had some of the best coaches of all time. I talk about my Coach J's a lot, my middle school and high school football and basketball coaches, Coach Joyner, Coach Jones, Coach Jackson, and Coach Joe, all of them Coach J's. But they were very instrumental to my growth as a young man. And it was right at that time when I was 14 years old when I told my mom that I was going to be successful, that, those coaches started playing that huge role in my life. And then getting to college and playing for a coach um, like Coach Caldwell in college. I couldn't have gotten a better mentor, leader to play for in college. And then you go to the pros, and then I get to play for who I feel like should be in the Hall of Fame, Coach Shanahan. Just a great coach, and with Coach Kubiak as my offense coordinator. Then I get to Chicago and I get to play with Lovie Smith. Just guys that not only I learned football from, but learned life lessons from, learned things that still stick with me to this day, just approaches about not like I say, not just sports, but life in general, because I see sports as something that can help you if you learn the lessons the right way, empirically, like they should be taught, then it also helps you live a better life.
Yeah. You're in 2006, your team went to the NFL championship and to Super Bowl 41. What are your memories from that experience? You've got the
Yeah,
jersey
yeah,
over your shoulder right here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's the actual one that I wore in the game.
Wow.
The first thing that sticks out is just the opening kickoff, right? Devin Hester taking that thing back to the house. And the second thing is just coming out of that huddle. We played in Miami, and I grew
You're
up in
from
Lakeland,
Florida.
Florida.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so had a lot of family down there, and just coming out of that huddle, realizing you finally made it to this point where this is the most watched TV event
And
ever
I read that it was at the time the fifth largest TV viewing event of all time.
of all time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you know how big it is, but I don't think anybody can really wrap their head around how big it is. But you do have that feeling of like everybody's watching. So just coming out of that huddle, just knowing that, hey man, I've been playing football since I was 6 years old, and I believe at the time I was 29. And I'm in this position to be playing in the Super Bowl, and I have like my family in the stands watching. That's an amazing feeling, and to do it with the guys that you've blood, sweat, and tears from training camp, right?
Hmm.
There's only two teams that get to get there. Only one could say that they won it, which was not us. But looking back on it, just to say that, hey, I'm one of the few people on this earth that played in a Super Bowl. Like that's something that I look back on and I cherish.
How does one settle down their nerves in that kind of situation? Like how do you you know is it maybe the first hit sometimes then you're like okay all right it like jostles you
Yeah,
into it but how do you go into that without just being a total bundle of nerves?
you breathe.
You
That's what I
breathe.
did.
Okay. Okay.
Like I think one of the best thing that happened for me is that Devin took the first kickoff back. Didn't have to go out on the field first
Yeah.
as an offense. So I
Mm.
got to see our defense go out and so especially after a big play like that. So I got to settle down on the sidelines a little bit just by taking deep breaths like, yes, this we got to go and we got to play this game. We got to treat
Yeah.
it like just any old other game and go out and just execute, run the plays, and hey, block, tackle, catch the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about this transition from being a professional player to the post-football life. And I've interviewed other professional athletes before, and sometimes that can be a really rough adjustment. Did you have an idea what you would do after your playing days were through, or was that something you had to figure out when you were done?
No, I definitely had to figure it out when I was done. My thought process is I was going to be a stay-at-home dad, but that didn't happen. A couple, I'm not even going to say, yeah, I guess you got to say bad investments, but it was crooks on the other side of that bad investment, right? And then you go through a divorce, and then right at the end of my playing career, I had tons of money in real estate development.
Mm,
And so we were developing a lot of real estate when all of that stuff
downturn.
came crashing down.
Mm.
So that was like the triple crown for me. Invested with some bad people, divorce, and then the crash of the real estate market
Did
in
all those things
2000.
happen around the time you were leaving the NFL?
All of those happened in my last 2 years in the NFL.
How do you focus on your job when all that stuff is going coming down all around you?
You have no other choice. That's just it's just like anybody else that's going to a corporate job. You go to work, you get the job done, and then you deal with that stuff once you're done with your job. Yes, you're thinking about it. I have 2010 when I was going through my divorce, I have notebooks of me journaling, writing. I was also going through a tough time at the end of my career because in 2010, I was relegated to the fourth tight end, which to this day, I would argue I was still the first or second best tight end on the team. I would concede to Greg Olsen because at that point he started making those strides. But other than him, I was the best tight end on the team. It comes down to, well, they paid a guy
Yeah.
a big time signing bonus. So they got to justify that with
Yeah.
playing him, right? And
Yeah.
then they spent a third round draft pick on someone. So they got to justify that draft pick, right? But if you go and ask any of those offensive coaches that were on the staff at that time, they'll all tell you because all of them went back to the head coach and said Desmond needs to be playing. But
Hmm.
offensive coordinator had to justify, his
Yeah.
move. So I was dealing with that all at the
Yeah.
same time. And sometimes I went back and looked at some of those writings. Um, yeah, if I wasn't writing in that notebook, I don't I don't know if I would have made it through that. But me just being very conscious of where my head was at, knowing that I was going through stuff at home and stuff at work. I remember writing in one of those in the notebook saying, you know what, let this be something that you can always look back at and your kids know that you handled things the right way. Because it was hard going to practice every day,
Yeah.
um, knowing that, hey, I should be playing and I'm not playing.
Yeah.
Especially when I sit right next to the guy that they're playing over me and he's
Yeah.
sleeping in a meeting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's overweight every single week.
Mm.
So that was really, really hard. And then he gets in the game and doesn't perform and doesn't grade out well, damn near every other week.
Yeah.
So, but that's why they call us professionals, right? You have
Yeah.
to be a professional. You still got to go out and you still got to practice. So I was practicing hard every day, but mainly on scout team against our defense.
Mm.
And I'm just gonna say I made our defense really good in 2010 because they had to guard a really good tight end week in and week out. So that was my saving grace during those periods. But yeah, going through those times, um, now coming out of that, knowing okay, stay at home dad is not in the books. The thing that really helped me to make that transition, although I didn't know what I was going to do and where I was going, is that I just never identified myself as just an athlete. I always thought that, hey, I'm a fairly decent guy, right? I'm a fairly smart guy. Um, Whatever it is that I want to do, I can do it. But I never put my identity on just being an athlete. And I think that's where most athletes they struggle because after they take the athlete away from you and now you can't participate in sports, if that was your whole identity, who are you now?
Mm.
And I don't think I ever struggled with who am I now? It was just, all right, what is this person going to do now? Because what I did was never my identity.
Mm. And so often for professional athletes, it comes from like the glory of like playing in the Super Bowl, and oftentimes the end is like a whimper. It doesn't come when you expect it to.
Hmm.
It might be being cut at the end of training camp, or it might be in the middle of the season or something like that. But it's not like you can plan for it. It's so rare that we hear of like these superheroes that sometimes walk off after winning a Super Bowl and retire. That rarely is the situation, right? Usually it's
Right.
like, shit, I didn't know it was going to be now, or you see this often too, like Kaepernick, right? Like for years was like preparing for his next opportunity with
Yeah,
another
right.
team. For years, you heard about this, right? And it's like you're in this kind of state of suspended animation. Did you experience something like that?
A little bit. I got cut and it was unexpected. I was having a good camp in 2011. They brought me back and I just assumed that I was going to make the team because I was having a hell of a camp, but I got hurt the third game of the preseason.
Mm.
And so also that third round draft pick from the year before he got hurt. And what I was told is that, hey, both of you guys are hurt. We don't know how long both of you are going to be out. Both of us had minor injuries. My contract is guaranteed. His is not. My contract is three times more than his. So they stuck with the younger guy. But they
Yeah.
said, hey, we could bring you back after week 10 if something was to happen, right? So just stay in shape, stay in contact. Week 9, the third tight end got hurt.
Mm.
And I called him. I was like, I'm here. I'm in
Hmm.
I'm in shape. healthy, ready to go. They called me back the next day and said, "Hey, we're going to save that third tight end position for a younger developmental tight end."
Mm,
When I hung up the phone that day, I told myself I was done. Like,
mm,
that's it. Let's start moving on.
yeah.
So, it wasn't me, hey, year after year after year trying to train. I was 34 years old also. I had a good 12-year run.
Yeah. I mean, that's
NFL.
that's old for NFL. 12 years is unusual in the NFL.
My
Yeah.
my nickname was Uncle Dez. So, so after that, I was prepared to move on. After I got the phone that
Yeah.
day.
And you went through a couple different careers. How did you figure out what you would do next after you had made that mental decision to move on?
Yeah, so that was a difficult part because I didn't prepare, right, to do something after football. So I went through this process where, I got into real estate and then as soon as I started doing well in that, I was like, I don't know if I love this. And then I got into medical device sales and started a company there. But then my partner, he was having trouble with his wife, and that became something that it shouldn't have been. And then I went into financial advising, which I stayed in that arena for a long time, from 2014 all the way to 2020. Um, and insurance, Mass Mutual. I actually had a small percentage of a small independent insurance company. In 2019, I said, hey, I want to be done with this. I want to be done with corporate America, and I'm just going to go out and do my passion, which is motivational speaking. And I wrote my book, Principles of Winning, at the end of 2019. And I launched it, and I was planning to launch it in 2020.
Oh,
But
jeez.
we all know what happened, man. The
Horrible
world just
timing.
shut down.
Jeez.
So I still launched the book, but there was no speaking engagements.
Yeah.
So I kept my eyes open, my ears open, and that's when I was introduced to logistics in 2021, by who is now a good friend. And over the course of 2 or 3 months, I got educated, sat in his office, learned some of the basics, and at that point I was like, I don't know if I want to come and work for someone, but I love this industry. And I actually asked him to help me to build my company, give me the foundation. And he did. And that was the start of Bear Down Logistics. And just by, posting on LinkedIn and him finding me on LinkedIn, I'm doing something that I absolutely love. It's my brainchild, my company. And I'm at home now with this. Now even have the identity of the company now, which we didn't have in those first 2.5 years. Now we are known for being one of the best heavy haul, oversized dimensional hauling companies in the United States.
What was it about the industry that drew you?
It's like process driven, right? Um, it's a lot of upfront work to get the customer, and that's the grind, right? But when you get the customer and now they are sending you loads on a daily basis, it's process oriented. And when I learned that, I said, you know what? I can build that process. I can execute that process. I can teach that process. And I had the vision of, hey, let's go out and get a handful of customers, be sustainable, and now go out and hire other people and bring them in and just, hey, it's a process, it's a training, and it's doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So if we can get good at these individual processes and bring them together, then we could build a really, really good company. I was very, very nearsighted with my thought process. But of course, when you get into something, you don't know everything that's going to come with it. But every step that I took, I seen another door that can open up, and took a step, kept taking more steps and more steps. I'm not even 4 years into it now. I'm gonna learn a whole lot more. But from where I came from to where I'm at now is like light years.
Yeah. It's funny because the way you describe it, is similar to what made you great as a professional athlete. Is you break it down to certain steps and you follow the process.
Yeah.
And whether it's pursuing professional football or whether it's a logistics company, it's very similar. If you can do one well, you can do the other well. I could see the similarities between the two.
Right. It's one of my principles that I talk about, the process of greatness, right? I believe that everybody has some sort of greatness in them. We just got to find it.
Yeah.
It's not always talent. You got to have a little bit of talent to be great at something, but you don't need to be uber talented, right? I ran a 4.88 40. I'm not even 6'3". I'm 6'2" and 7/8. That's what they told me in the combine. They wouldn't give me 6'3". I was 252 pounds my playing career. We know that tight ends are 6'6", 6'7",
Wow.
260, 265,
Right.
270, right? And
Right.
run 4.5s and 4.6s. But over the course of my time, and I'm speaking about Chicago specifically, after I got done, at some point they said, "Hey, you're one of the greatest tight ends in Chicago Bears history." So if I can do that with not having the measurables, right? This is the process. The
Hmm.
process of greatness is executing the details in excellence consistently over time. And those are choices that you make. That's not God-given. It's not only God-given ability.
Hmm.
Um, Executing, finish it from the beginning to the end. The details, study and understand the details, work on the details, and know how to execute those details at a high level, right? And now this is where most people, the good from the people who are considered great at what they do, they do it consistently. Consistently. It's not one day. Anybody can do it, good or great every now and again, right?
Right.
Ooh, I feel really good today. I'm gonna go out and,
Right.
and, and give it my all, right? But
Right.
then the next day, I'm tired.
Hmm.
Well, the people who are considered great at what they do it consistently.
Yeah.
And then they do it over a long period of time. And then over somewhere in that continuum of time, people start to recognize, oh, John, he's great at podcasting. Oh, Desmond is great at coaching or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But you never hear of people, you're great right when you come out of the blocks. You have the potential, but nobody's calling you great then. So that process of greatness, executing the details in excellence consistently over time, I believe anybody can find something that they can be great in if they focus on those five different elements.
That's a great lesson. Desmond, this has been such a pleasure. I'm so glad we made this happen. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about Bear Down Logistics?
Um, I just got back on Instagram, Des Clark 88, DEZ Clark 88. But I have most of my stuff is on LinkedIn. They can go to the website, www.beardown-logistics.com. Put the dash in there because if you don't put the dash in there, the hyphen, then you're gonna go to another website. And that's the difference between good and great, that dash.
Sounds good. All right, Desmond, thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.